I'd first like to thank George for having us today. This is such an honor and privilege to be here and speak with you all. I first went on my first canoe trip when I was 13 years old. I had never been in a canoe. I was as a young boy growing up in Boulder, Colorado. My parents came to me and thought I needed a little more structure and discipline. I was doing things that parents of 13-year-olds don't really like. So they told me that I was going to spend my summer in Canada. At first, I was thrilled. I was excited because my grandfather had a cottage in Canada, and I thought I was going to spend the summer with him. Turns out, I was going to a place called Keewaydin. To be honest, that was one of the worst summers of my life. I spent most nights crying in my tent, wondering why my parents had done this to me. But the last night at Keewaydin, when all of the long trips had returned, we all, the younger kids, sat around and we heard their stories. After hearing their stories, well, there I am. I knew what I wanted to do. So I returned home. I told my parents, I have a goal. They were very excited. And to this day, I still return there every summer, working as the staff. And my goal was to be one of these long trip staffmen. Phillip Hague is who I work with.
Yeah, I'm Phillip Hague. I'm actually the guide for the trip. I've been doing this for about 15, 16 years now, and I was kind of in the same boat as Matthew. I kind of got tossed into it by my parents when I was 12 years old. Didn't really like it at first either. 15 years later, here I am, still coming back, still hope to make it back next year, and still love it, still really enjoy it.
Everything at Keewaydin is hard. From getting your firewood. Whoops, this is fast. We cook all of our meals over open fires, so the boys learn that what type of wood burns best and what type of wood doesn't burn so well. They learn that cooking a bannock with balsam tends to take a long time. So the kids get a big sense of pride and accomplishment when they do get a nice stick of wood. These guys found a nice cedar. But it's amazing to watch these kids grow from the beginning to the end. And every morning usually starts out with myself, because I really like the morning, cooking breakfast and drinking my coffee, and then deciding that it's time to get everyone else up and enjoy the day. Our days are filled with paddling, portaging, lining, all the things that you do in a canoe trip. The kids learn to do all the cooking, which is great for us. We get to sit back and they get to go through the wanigans and stuff and decide what meals they want. Sometimes it can be frustrating, but they all work together and they find their role. They become quite the team, and they really much enjoy peanut butter and bannock. Who doesn't? Yeah. Not much has changed at Keewaydin since 1893. We still use wood canvas canoes. A big change is in 1999 we introduced a girls program, which has been very successful, and we started using nylon tents in the 80s. And other than that, it's pretty much the same. The boys, they work together to do portages and get over obstacles and goals. And I tell you, it doesn't matter. It's amazing to see everything. These kids back home are so worried about how they look, what they've posted on Facebook, what their friends are doing. But if you could flip up a wood canvas canoe on your own, well, you're a cool kid. We use traditional tump lines, and it's just, I remember the first time I saw a tump, I was like, what is that? I still see that look in a lot of kids' eyes. And it's just really neat to watch them grow. We line rapids. As they work as a team to get their boats and gear around obstacles, you can notice we carry a lot of gear, because on some of our trips that Philip's going to talk to you about that we just did. We were out for almost 50 days. We do get to run some rapids. My friend there would not like that I showed this picture because he did not make it that much further after this. Yeah, and the kids, they learn the skills and how to navigate down these rapids. It's much different in the wood canvas canoe. You just can't bomb down something. You got to know how to read the lines. And they also learn that when you do tear your canvas over a while, your boat becomes much heavier. So they too want to miss the rocks because carrying a 100-pound boat is not fun. And just the friendships that you grow, that you make, and the people that you meet along the way are just, you never forget them. Now, Philip's going to talk about our adventure that we took last year.
So like Matt said, we're actually fortunate enough to be able to lead Keewaydin's longest trip, as well as this most senior trip, which is really nice. I feel very fortunate to be able to do it. This is actually the 100th year that it took place. So that's a pretty big deal to be able to be involved in it. Matt and myself started talking back in January about where we wanted to go, what we were going to do, because Keewaydin pretty much gives us a blank canvas with the end goal being Hudson Bay. So, I mean, we have a pretty wide range of what we can do as long as we can get there by road. So we started talking back in January about where we wanted to go, and we decided on heading to the Richmond Gulf at the end. This trip, like Matt said, is a culmination of years of experience from these guys. These guys have been doing this, some of them 7 years, 5 years, 4 years, whatever. So basically, we figured out where we wanted to go. And then early June, we head up to the island, which is in Temagami. That's where we prep all of our food, all of our gear, and get ready to head out. Just for an example, we pack, like he was saying, we use we use all raw ingredients, so we're taking a ton of flour, a ton of sugar. We took, I think, 95 pounds of brown sugar, 175 pounds of white flour, 100 pounds of rice, just unbelievable amounts of food. And so once we get all that packed up and get these Wanigans set that can weigh anywhere from 80 to 100 pounds at the beginning, you got 2 of them in a boat, so these boats can, handle some load. Then once the campers come up about 2 weeks later, we basically pile them into vans and then head north. We get on the James Bay Highway, go about as far north as you can on that, right before Radisson, and as many of you know, we just hook a right on the Trans-Taiga, go about as far as we can on that, and I apologize for my attempt at French, but we get dropped off at Lac des Oeufs, so it's Egg Lake, I guess. And from there, we pretty much continue north. When you get dropped off in these places, you're in the van with these drivers, and you have some, you talk back and forth, but you haven't really become a section. And then they drop you off in the middle of the woods. It's usually raining, freezing cold, and you're not very excited. And then the vans turn around and take off, and Matt and myself look at each other and these guys and say, we're going that way. And we basically just take off into the woods. Let's see. Basically, and I would talk a little bit about the first part of our trip, but to tell you the truth, it was, it was 40 degrees, it was raining every day, it was portaging 7 to 8 times a day. It was pretty miserable. So I'm going to skip along to basically when we got to Lac Bienville, which many of you know, I'm sure, which is a big lake. We were super lucky. We had a lot of big crossings this summer, and when we got to Bienville, we usually get up around 4 in the morning just because, like he said, we like the mornings. It's quieter without these guys awake yet. And but we woke up that morning, and it was glass. So we took off. I think we made 35 kilometers across it before lunch and just called it a day. So we kind of breathed a sigh of relief to get across this big stretch of water, Basically, we continue north by the Relo River, I guess, into Lac d'Iberville, which is another huge lake. When we hit that, we had the same thing. We had glassy conditions, and we just jetted right across it. I mean, moving 35, 40 kilometers in a day on a lake is a lot, but when you have 6 canoes and, you know, you're trying to organize a bunch of kids to do it, it really becomes a whole other set of issues. So basically, at this point, we're probably 3 weeks into our trip, and obviously we can't carry 50 days worth of food on us at the beginning. So we had chartered a plane from Air Saguenay to fly us in a re-outfit into Little Seal Lake. And at this point, you know, it's day 21. We haven't seen a soul. We haven't seen, you know, you don't see anyone up there. And we thought, you know, when this guy comes in, we'll be able to get some news. We'll be able to talk to him, hang out, you know, see what's going on in the world. And the first thing he says is bonjour. And, you know, so we got nothing but food. Because I can't speak French, and he didn't speak a word of English. So through a series of head nods and hand gestures, we offloaded our food and said goodbye, and 20 minutes later, you know, we're on our own again out in the woods. We packed up all that food, basically threw it into the boxes. That makes them, you know, 100 pounds all over again in the middle of the summer, but hopefully you're a little bit stronger at this point. We jetted down to Big Seal Lake, which, as they were talking about earlier, you know, the running joke with us became, I thought the Seal Lakes would be a little bit more sealy, because we didn't really see but one, and it didn't hang around for a photo either. So, you know, it was nice. So we felt lucky. I think the population of freshwater seals up there is supposed to be within like 40 to 50. So we felt pretty fortunate to be able to see one. From there, we took the Noonish River down into Clearwater Lake, which is just an amazing lake. I can't say enough about it. It's enormous. It's pretty horrifying from a staff point of view, just knowing that you got to get across it. You do feel like you're paddling in the Caribbean a little bit until you touch the water, and it's some of the coldest water I've ever paddled on for sure. But at this point, we and again we had glass that day. We paddled. It must have been 40 kilometers because we have to stick pretty close to the shore, and we made it by I think 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. We were done, and so we had decided at this point that we were going to go down the North River to get to Omoyak, which is a spectacular river. It's beautiful. It starts out about yay big, and it gets bigger as it goes, but it doesn't get any deeper. And with these boats, you know, we can't, it's annoying when you have to get out of the boat every 5 minutes and you know, wiggle it, move it, do something, because you can't really hit rocks in them, like Matt said. So I will not be returning to the North River. But it is a beautiful river if you get a chance to go there. Basically, from there, the north drops into a gorge into the Richmond Gulf. This is kind of the beginning of it. But we had decided that we weren't going to really try to mess with the getting down the gorge, so we're going to hop through a series of lakes and do one long portage into the Richmond Gulf, which, you know, we ended up knocking out in a day. We had to camp in the middle of a portage, which is a first for me, and I think we kind of made a little sinkhole and got water. I'm not really sure how we did it. But the next day, you know, this is the series of lakes we were going through, and this cliff right here was amazing. It was just full of peregrine falcons flying around, and it echoed off that wall and was just unbelievable. But so this was our first view of the Richmond Gulf, and this is the last lake, and we had to portage from this lake to the bottom. So it was like, I think it was close to 2.5 miles. But we knocked that portage out, and when we got down there, we didn't get the memo that the tide was out. So we ended up sitting on the shore for a couple hours because, you know, the tide changes so much that we couldn't float the boats until it came in because you can't walk out in that mud. Obviously, the Richmond Gulf is absolutely spectacular. I can't say, you just can't describe it. The cliffs, I think, are 1,500 feet, 1,600 feet or something, and it's just unbelievable. The water's super clear. Just a really amazing place. And we decided, well, there's all the guys at the end of the trip, right before we had to do that portage. And then we decided that we would go ahead and end the trip. We were going to paddle up and head into Amoyak, and we hadn't made any real contact in Amoyak before we got there, so we just paddled, up to the road. And our plan was to get up early the next morning, and Matt and myself were going to hike into town and try to hire someone to come get us, or maybe rent a truck. We didn't really know. And I think it's about 10 kilometers into town, so it's a pretty good ways. But before we could do that, this truck pulled up with a man and a woman, and it happened to be our very own Noah, who came up to us. And at this point we had seen just our re-outfit pilot, hadn't talked to him at all. We've been in the bush for 50 days. Very first person we see is Noah, and he greets us with 2 words that I'll never forget, which were "welcome home." And that really struck a chord with me, and I think it was very meaningful for me and Matt and all the guys to hear that. It just is a real nice way to come back from being in the bush that long. I can't say enough about the people in Amoyak. They were extremely friendly, extremely welcoming to us. They invited us into their homes. They kept us fed. They made sure we had everything. Matt and myself had to go up to the airport several times a day to make sure our flight was going to get out. So they would always give us rides when we're walking up. If you've ever been there, that's a long walk. So that's pretty much our trip to to the Richmond Gulf and to Amoyak. After that, we chartered a flight out of Amoyak back to Radisson, hopped in our vans, and they took us back to Keewaydin.
I stepped over a little part. I'm not the greatest public speaker. This is probably the scariest thing I've ever done. But Keewaydin's goal is to give an unforgettable summer experience for boys age 10 to 18. We also have a girls program for the same age groups that do the same trips we do through adventure canoe trips. These fun, empowering, and safe excursions build outdoor skills while fostering strength, leadership, self-reliance, and confidence. It was founded in 1893 by a man named A.S. Greg Clark, and it's located on Devil's Island on Lake Temagami, and it's one of the oldest camps in North America. And a lot of people ask us, why do you guys go to Canada every summer? First I like to say, well, if you've never been there, you got to get up there and take a look around. It's amazing. But we work at this summer camp because we were taught these traditions, and we are teaching these traditions because we really want it to be around for another 100 years. So once again, thank you very much for listening to us and having us here, and we hope to see you out in the woods.
Thank you.